Have you ever made a quilt with no pattern? Are you an improv quilter or do you follow instructions to the letter? In today's video, I'm going to share with you a simple formula to make your own unique quilt without a pattern. Hi, I'm Andy, and this is True Blue Quilts, a place to enjoy, experiment, and excel as you quilt. Today we'll explore this beach-themed quilt that I recently did the long arm stitching on for a customer. My customer did not use a pattern for this quilt, but you can see it is made up of some basic elements that almost any quilter would be able to put together themselves. She started with basic squares and she built her quilt around the beach theme. So that helps. Just let the fabric do the work. You can see the seashells and footprints in the sand, and she found a great wave water print for the alternate squares. Figure out how big your overall quilt needs to be, and then plan the layout of those squares. And it's really random. She could have chosen to do the top half of the quilt as water with the bottom half as the sand, maybe just a few sandy squares edging into the water there, but she just randomly put the squares all over. And then what makes this quilt so fabulous are all of the applique flip-flops. She used a different fabric and ribbon combination to make her flip-flops. Now, it would be very easy to draw your own flip-flops on a piece of paper and then just stitch the ribbon on top. Another fun element of this quilt are the beach towels. Each beach towel is stitched from a different pair of fabrics, and then some cute little sayings are embroidered over the top. So if you have an embroidery machine and are able to stitch some writing there, or even hand stitch over some lettering that you have penciled in, that would be a fun touch. So the beach towel sayings are: life is better at the beach, stay salty, and beach bliss. Once you know the overall size of your quilt, you can plan the center layout and then add some borders. And borders are a great way to increase the size of your quilt. And they can be large, they can be small, they can be plain, they can be pieced. You have a lot of options when you are thinking about borders. It would be fun on a beach theme quilt to use the snail's trail block, because that looks like rolling waves, and maybe just a few of those blocks in the border would continue that watery theme that we have in this quilt. One design principle that I like to keep in mind when I am adding elements such as these applique designs is the rule of 3, or take that a step further and use odd numbers. Your attention is always drawn in when things are asymmetrical, when they are just offset a little bit, like you naturally get in a group of 3. So you can see the 3 beach towels, and then our eye moves around the quilt and we see we have 3 groups of flip-flops across the top. Overall, there are an odd number of flip-flops, so that carries that rule through as well. To quilt the sand in the borders, I just used a simple switchback design. And with the sandy fabric, that design worked great in the border. I also added some loopy meander to fill the smaller blue border. And I just kept going around and filling in those circles in that border. And you can vary the size of your circles. You can get little ones going in there or bigger ones. That variety is the spice of life, and you can see how that meander design would stitch up really quick. For the main body of the quilt, I just did some wavy lines, kind of worms, and then I added in some spirals because my customer thought that would look like the rolling, waving sand, and it was easy to fill the space as I went around the quilt and just traveled from block to block and occasionally did those spirals back and forth in each of those sandy blocks. To quilt the water, I used the spiral design. So again, I would generally start with some wavy lines and then I would fill in with some spirals. And for this, I wanted to keep that rule of 3 going. So I would group those spirals in thirds. So I would keep 3 of them going, and then I'd find a different place in the block to do my next 3. You know how waves don't always line up? You might have a wave way over to this side of the beach and then the next one comes in over here, and I would just fill in and I would try to keep at least 3 to 5 lines in between each of the groups of spirals and keep them all looping the same direction. So you can see I'm stitching from left to right. So I always start my spiral there at the top and curve around clockwise. Just because if you get spirals going opposite directions, they look kind of odd from a distance. So I would keep those consistent and then just space them out between my block, not always on a perfect diagonal, well, maybe on the right, then on the left, then in the middle. And occasionally I would throw in just 1 or 2. You know, you never want to get into a specific pattern of doing the exact same element in the exact same place on all the blocks. And I thought that gave my water blocks great texture in this beach quilt. Are you ready for a beach vacation? Take a notebook and sketch out some ideas for your next quilt that you don't even need a pattern for. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Happy quilting! Coming soon is the quilting plan for our Meteor quilt. Hit the subscribe button so that you get notified when that video debuts. In the meantime, if you're still working on the Meteor blocks, watch this playlist. There are tutorials for choosing fabrics and piecing all the blocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.